Hey Brian. Hey
Hey,
YouTube. How we doing?
I'm doing great.
Good.
It's
Me
not
too.
hot yet.
It's not hot yet. It's going to be hot. It's going to
It's
be
gonna be
hot.
hot.
Yeah. So it was. They just had the IndyCar Grand Prix yesterday here in Portland, at the Portland International Raceway. It was the hottest IndyCar race in history. Like the track was 125 degrees or something like that. So that's how it is. Good thing we record in the morning. All right, let's do it. Let's
Yeah.
jump in. Hello and welcome to Python Bytes, where we deliver Python news and headlines directly to your earbuds. This is episode 444, recorded August 11th, 2025. I am Michael Kennedy.
And I'm Brian Ocken.
And this episode is brought to you by DigitalOcean and their generative AI features and tools, and DigitalOcean more generally, but specifically by their Gen AI tools, which we're going to talk about. Brian's going to tell you about them. So check that out at pythonbytes.fm slash DigitalOcean-gen-AI and use the code DO4Bytes, all caps, and get a $200 credit. So if you're looking to try out DigitalOcean, you might as well use our code and get plenty of credits. Also, connect with us on the socials, Mastodon, Blue Sky, YouTube, all of those things. Links are in the show notes at the top. And I highly recommend that you subscribe to our newsletter, which Brian sends out a really nice email pretty soon after the show is out, diving further into the stuff that we talked about, maybe some additional resources and links and insights and tools and all that. It's not just a email version of the show notes. It's really cool. I enjoy getting it as well. Thanks, Brian.
I enjoy putting it together.
Yes, I enjoy hearing about whatever you've got to cover first. So
Wait, we
let's,
have to cover.
yeah, let's jump in
So,
there.
speaking of coverage, let's talk about coverage. Ned Batchelder released I, I guess this was in July, but just recently, a blog post called coverage.py regex pragmas. So that seems like a mouthful, and probably please don't run away because this is powerful. I know that pragmas and regex isn't everybody's
Man,
favorite topic.
I'm feeling like C++ is back again.
So what does pragma mean? It's the pound thing. Like, so let's say if you say like pragma exclude or something like that, to say, or no cov, to say, hey, for coverage for this particular line of code, don't worry about measuring the coverage on that. However, so this is a great article, and I did not realize I've been using coverage for years, and I did not realize it was this powerful. So, coverage uses regexes to define pragma syntax, and you don't really have to care about it if you just want to just for each individual thing you want to pop in. And there is a way to say particular files, just ignore the whole file. However, this is pretty cool. So what is he talking about? He's talking about a couple things around it that allow you can extend it using regular expressions, and you don't necessarily have to figure this out. Other people have figured it out for you. For instance, there are plugins for coverage that do a lot of this. So there's Cov defaults, and this one's brought to us by Anthony Satili. Cool. So Anthony has cov defaults, and so there's a whole bunch of defaults already in there to do things like exclude your dundermain.py file, because if you're distributing a package, that might be just so you can test things. You're probably not going. It's okay if coverage doesn't hit it. A lot of stuff like that, and then a whole bunch of regular expressions for things like typing relating code, and excluding that. That's pretty cool. I didn't know that was there. That's neat. Another one is coverage conditional plugin, which does things like if you've got certain what does it do? He talks about it. It gives you a way to create common syntaxes for entire files or entire packages, whether a package is installed or different operating systems, things like that. That's pretty neat also. But a change happened apparently recently. This was, well, recently for me, last year, but a change to coverage that allowed multi-line, and this was contributed by Daniel Diniz. Um, multi-line pragmas or multi-line regular expressions so that it like compares it for the whole file. So one of the neat things about this is you can do things like with this regular expression that you can put in your no coverage stuff. You can pop in pragma exclude file and define a file there instead of trying to figure out how to find the file in your directory structure. You can just pop this in and say, this particular file, I don't want to delete it yet, but don't worry about this for testing. That's pretty cool.
Right. My boss has been on me about getting that code coverage percentage up. So,
I wouldn't do it for that. And
is that not what it's for? Okay.
No,
I like the idea. I'm just teasing. I like the idea.
I actually like, I mean, I've heard a lot of people say hitting 100% isn't worthwhile, but I think it is because coverage is so powerful. You can, with all of this stuff, you can say, I want to hit 100% of the code that I care about, not the stuff I don't care about, but the things that the problem areas. You can define this so that you can just focus on the files and areas where you really want coverage, and that needs to be 100%. So that's my caveat for why I like 100%. A couple other cool pragmas, start and stop. So you can just say at the start and stop, like add a comment to the top of a code block to say, yeah, this junk we're not. I'm leaving it in here, but it's not running during testing, so don't cover it. So really powerful. I really love all of these. They're pretty great. Oh, this is a neat one. So have you ever had like these default, like a placeholder method where you just use three dots or something? I'm using three dots a lot more than pass because it kind of does the same thing. And you can just say, yeah, this is here because it has to for some structural reason, but it's never going to run. So don't worry about trying to cover that. So that's pretty neat.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, very cool.
Anyway, thanks, Ned, for teaching us how to use regular expressions for coverage. See,
yeah, that's very neat. All right, I want to take you back to the times of knights, maidens, to the land of Yore. No, this is totally different. This comes to us from Matthias. It is a package called Yore, however.
Okay.
It's quite new. It's like an undiscovered gem sort of thing. So when I first saw this, I'm like, do I care about this? I don't know if I care about this. And then I looked more carefully. I'm like, that is kind of interesting. It starts with a quote from ChatGPT, the sage, which is always good, but it's more productive to just jump down to some examples. So basically what this is it's a tool a little bit like Rough or Flint or one of those things that works on, basically it looks at your code, tells you if there are issues. But this one is focused specifically on, have you previously supported unsupported versions of Python by doing stuff the old way, be that typing, or the example is the abstract, the AS tune parser. I don't know what that is. Or the AST parser. Yeah, abstract syntax tree. If you want to use that and you're using 3.8 or before, you had to use the AS tune parse, I guess, from unparse. Or if you're in 3.9 or above, you can use AST from unparse. So, right, you probably have this comment like, if the version of Python that I'm running on is less than this, I'm going to do this one thing. Otherwise, I'm going to do the other.
Yeah.
And so what you do here is you still write that code because that's how it is. However, you put a comment, kind of like, PyCharm and VS Code, if you put a capital to do colon as a comment, I don't know if you've noticed this, but probably.
Yeah.
If you say capital to do colon and then you write something, that shows up in a separate window. At least in PyCharm, you say, show me my to-dos. And when you try to do a commit, it'll say, hey, you added some new to-dos that are not done. You sure you want to commit? Like, there's a whole integration with the tooling like that. So This is the same type of deal. So you say, put a comment that is capital Yore colon, and then you say EOL, in this case, EOL 3.8, and you put a comment.
Oh.
And then a thing like replace block with line 4.
Okay.
Okay, so you say, once 3.8 is gone and we stop supporting it, just do the straight import. We don't have to do this test. We don't have to do anything. And then later, you can run in your code, you say your check EOL within 5 months. And it says, whenever you run it at the right time, Python 3.8 will reach its end of life approximately 4 months. So it uses the comments to say you've got sections of your code that are complicated because of Python versioning breaking changes.
Oh, cool.
Here they are, right? And you can look for them much like you can use rough check to say, show me issues with my code. But what's even better, rough check has a -- fix, and so does Yore. So you can say your fix EOL within 5 months. It'll actually rewrite that code and replace the block with line 4 and just go back to the straight import. Remove the Yore comment, remove the version checks, all that. What do you think?
Okay. I like it.
For such a simple idea, I like it too.
Now, I'll have to play with this a little bit because it totally makes sense for Python, like, deprecating Python versions and stuff. And one of the cool things about looking into the future is you might be working on a release that you're not planning on releasing for another month. So you getting started cleaning those up. But that might be your own stuff. You might be deprecating your own features. So you might, I'm wondering if you can put Yore for your own features, or is it just a Python EOL thing?
Yeah, that's what I've been thinking about as well. Is I would like it not just necessarily for my features, but hey, Pydantic went from V1 to V2, and that had super big deprecations for certain really common functions, right? Like dumping to JSON and so on.
Yeah.
Oh, do that.
Is it just the Python release cycle? I don't know. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah. I think it's just Python version itself, but who knows?
Okay. Neat.
Yeah. Very, very neat. All right. Also neat is DigitalOcean.
Yeah, let me tell you about DigitalOcean. This episode of Python Bytes is brought to you by DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean is a comprehensive cloud infrastructure that's simple to spin up, even for the most complex workloads, and it's a way better value than most cloud providers. At DigitalOcean, companies can save up to 30% off their cloud bill. DigitalOcean boasts 99.99% uptime SLAs and industry-leading pricing on bandwidth. It's built to be the cloud backbone of businesses small and large. And with GPU-powered virtual machines plus storage, databases, and network capabilities all in one platform, AI developers can confidently create apps using a platform that the users love. Devs have access to the complete set of infrastructure tools they need for both training and inference, so they can build anything they dream up. DigitalOcean provides full-service cloud infrastructure that's simple to use, reliable, no matter the use case, scalable for any size business, and affordable at any budget. VMs start at just $4 a month, and GPUs under $1 per hour. Wow. Easy to spin up infrastructure built to simplify even the most intense business demands. That's DigitalOcean. And if you use DO4Bytes, DO the number 4 and BYTES, you get $200 in free credit to get started. DigitalOcean is the cloud that's got you covered. Please use our link when checking out their offer. You'll find it in the podcast player show notes. It's a clickable chapter URL as you're hearing this segment, and it's also at the top of the episode page in pythonbytes.fm. And why wouldn't you? It's $200 credit. Thank you to DigitalOcean for supporting Python Bytes.
Indeed. Thank you. Over to you. What's next? Wait, no, over to me. Over to me. Sorry, I'm retracting that statement. I got the order wrong, Brian. So we've talked about Nox before, right? You're a fan of Nox, aren't you?
Yeah.
So Nox is a command line tool like PyTest or Tox that allows you to test against multiple versions of Python. Right, so super cool. You can run it. You can say this might depend on whatever particular version of Python or whatever, right? So the thing I want to tell you about is something called UV. No, sorry, Nox UV, and this comes to us from John Hagen, and this facilitates Nox integration with UV for Python projects. So remember, UV is awesome at installing different versions of Python rapidly. Like you can install, go to a machine that has no Python whatsoever, and you can pick your version of Python and have it installed and ready to use in under 2 seconds. Versus PyEnv, which builds it and takes minutes, or downloading the installer and making sure you have all the versions you're going to test with, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that's really awesome. And then also installing the dependencies for these different versions of Python. UV is ultra fast at that as well. So there's huge advantages to speeding up testing and CI with UV. And if you're using Nox to create a combinatorial matrix of all the different versions of Python you might work with, well, then UV speed is only going to multiply across that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so super cool. So you can just say UV add group Nox and Nox UV, and it'll add that in there. And then within your Nox file, you import the session. Instead of from Nox, you do it from Nox UV. Set the backend to be UV, and then for your session, you specify which versions of Python, which groups, etc. Off it goes. I feel like this should be your topic, honestly, Brian. I think I stole it from you somehow effectively.
Why is that?
No, just because you're so into testing, and this is like right at the heart of it.
Oh, okay.
What do you think? Cool.
I think this is neat. Yeah, I'm using like UV almost everywhere now, and I used to recommend people like just average folks that are just starting Python or that just like need it for work. I would recommend them go to python.org and download it. And I'm kind of doing that, but I'm leaning towards like trying to teach people how to use UV in virtual environments because it's not going to be that long after they start using Python that they're going to want to use that anyway. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, and recently we just covered this, that one of the main things UV did is now there's a Python version in your path if you install a Python via
Yeah.
UV, which it used to just be in like some obscure place hidden in like your user profile sort of thing. It was hard to run it outside of a virtual environment.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, very cool. Thanks, John, for sending that in. Now over to you, Brian.
All right. So let's take a look. I've got a couple short-ish Django items, so I thought I'd cover them together. So the first comes from Johnny Metz, and it's stop using Django squash migrations. There's a better way. And actually, I didn't know about squash migrations. I'm kind of new to Django, the Django world, newish. But I like this article because I watched a pro, kind of an old hat, when I was I was doing a session with somebody that knows Django way better than I do, and I had a whole bunch of migrations because I was fiddling with the database structure and everything, and I was going back and forth changing things. And I had a bunch of migrations, and he said, "Wait a second, just a second. Let me do something." And he just like he did this. So what am I doing? What am I talking about? This is Johnny Metz, who's recommending doing a clean reset. So you fully migrate all your environments, make sure everything's running well, and then you delete all your migration files. Seems crazy, but you delete them all and generate a fresh migrations, and then you've got just a new one. So this creates a new 0001 initial for each app, and then some apps might get a 002 or higher. So you do this on different. It's going to do it on different apps, but then okay, I'll just walk through it. Fully migrate all your environments, delete all your migrations, generate fresh migrations, then add data migrations, temporarily disable automatic migrations during deployment, reset migrations. Okay, so it's not trivial. Then re-enable automatic migrations. So why would you do all of this? This seems more complicated. However, you end up with like a really clean set. So you've got like a very clean migration set at the end. And I don't know if this is. I'm not a Django pro, but so I'm not sure if this is appropriate later on. But especially after you've like hashed through the initial development, this is a great time to start clean and then work from there. So interesting Django article.
It is an interesting idea. And certainly, I think if you've not pushed it to production,
Yeah,
you just like, instead of having the 100 migrations you may have built over time as you built up the app before you push it out live, like just get that down to a single migration, get the database up and running, and go from there.
yeah. I'm not sure if it mentions it in here too, but I have been, I guess, yeah, I think it sets it up here. But having migrations per application, anyway. Um, the other one is this comes from Adam Hill. Is DJ Lite, and this is a fairly new project, and it is how to use SQLite in production with Django. So, yes, you can use SQLite with Django, but there's some tricks. So, he wrote an article called "The Definitive Guide to Using Django with SQLite in Production," and then he decided to go ahead and he's still recommending that, but there's this plugin to make it easier. So with this plugin, you got a couple settings that you can change, and it just runs with it. So it's way easier setup if you want to use Django Lite or SQLite with Django. And his this little blurbs here at the top says that simplify deploying and maintaining production Django websites using SQLite in production. DJ Lite helps enable the best performance for SQLite for small to medium-sized projects. It requires Django 5.1 or above, but I think Django Lite or SQLite is appropriate for a lot of Django. A lot of people just start with Postgres, but anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's certainly defaults you can change or behaviors you can change about SQLite to make it way more high performance, especially with concurrent read write sort of things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very cool. And following up on the Squash migrations, Pat Decker says, sounds like a familiar to Git rebase, maybe. Yeah, it does to me for sure.
Yeah.
Squashing, yeah, very similar. Okay. While you have the stage, how extra do you feel?
I got a couple extras, so we can just cover them. So the first up is I've got a testing code episode in the queue. It's in draft mode currently. Fast API Cloud with Sebastian Ramirez. And it was a real fun talk with Sebastian. This was recorded. I can't even remember when it was recorded. Maybe it was a few weeks ago at least. I feel bad getting so slow to get it out. But really interesting article about Fast API and about Fast API Cloud. And Sebastian's just a joy to talk with. So that'll be out later today. I have to re-record the ad for it, but not much left to do. And then next up, pythontest.com, a couple things. I had a fixture. When was this? 2013 that I started. So this is over 10 years ago. That I wrote a 4-part series on PyTest fixtures, and I had been talking that I was looking at analytics, and some of the stuff's still getting hit. So I went and reviewed it, and this series was a mess. And I went ahead and I didn't rewrite it, but I went through everything and split it up into a more multi-part series. A lot of these are really short. I just wanted to keep one topic per blog post and make sure that it runs. A lot of the stuff didn't even run on current PyTest and current Python. Now it all runs with current PyTest and Python. So here's a nice fixture tutorial there. The other thing I wanted to bring up with Python test is there is a bunch of stuff. So 2013 up through this year, there was a bunch of stuff that was like formatted badly, and I have gone through and made sure everything is mostly correct. So if you see I think everything's working now. So if you see anything weird, let me know. As I was reviewing this morning, I realized that in this particular post, I refer to a fixture as fixture B and it's really resource B. So I'll have to fix that. But things like that shouldn't be too bad. Anyway,
Nice.
that's all up to date. Do you have any updates or
I
extras?
have 3 extras, and I think they're really exciting. They're going to be really cool for people. So let me tell you about them. First, brand new course over at Talk Python. I'm really excited about this one. Some of the most impactful courses that we create there are ones that take people from like 0 to 1 or like 1 and 1.5 to 2, like the first sort of steps, right? And so
Yeah.
this new course is called Just Enough Python for Data Scientists.
Oh,
And
nice.
Python is kind of a stand-in for software engineering with Python, right? So the idea of this course is if you've done work in Jupyter notebooks, but you kind of feel like, well, I just learned notebooks and a little bit of Python because I was at this research lab or in this course I took, but I don't really know Git very well. I don't know refactoring super well. Reproducibility is still an issue. Those kinds of things. So it covers like what do you need to pay attention to in the dev world or the software world, and what can you safely ignore, right? Like, don't try to boil the ocean when you're getting started. What can you just not pay attention to? How do you write functions, create importable modules and packages to split up notebooks from like one large notebook cell into a bunch of usable, testable, more readable pieces. Debugging, reproducibility with like Docker and UV, and even a little bit of agentic AI for like data analysis to like jumpstart your work. So if people are interested in this, I highly recommend it. It's an awesome course that I wrote over the last 3 or 4 weeks, and I'm really happy to have it out.
That's pretty exciting. I like the topic.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. All right. Speaking of UV, I was just on with Will Vincent from Django Chat. When was this? This was live streamed 4 days ago. And we did a whole 1 hour like paired presenting sort of thing on UV, why people might use it, compatibility, what's new. I even did a thing like how to make your Docker builds 5 times faster sort of thing, or 30 times faster, depending on what if you're using pip, it'll be 30 times faster. So super neat, super neat stuff that people can check out. And that's just on YouTube. So I'm going to link to that. And then last is I'm a fan of Cursor when I'm doing like super heavy AI programming. Obviously a big fan of PyCharm when I'm doing like focused development work, right? But if I'm just like, I just need some heavy duty AI tools, Cursor. And Claude Code has been getting a lot of traction lately because it's like this terminal-based thing. You can use it anywhere. Well, Cursor just came out with a Cursor CLI that you can set up. That's pretty neat. So use it in your IDE or any terminal. Cursor, JetBrains, Android Studio, Xcode, whatever. So pretty neat. If you kind of like Cursor, but you also are kind of prefer the terminal side of things, check this out. It's in beta, but so far, it seems pretty neat. If you have a subscription, it just like integrates with that.
Neat.
Yeah, those are my extras.
Nice.
I have a joke for us as well.
Oh, good.
Yes. And I think this AI thing I just gave a shout out to perfectly blends into this. Okay. Control-C, Control-V remains eternal. But what kind of dev are you? This means something different, Brian. If you're a new school developer, you copy and paste from ChatGPT. If you're old school, you copy and paste from Stack Overflow. And if you're ancient like you and me, you copy and paste from the documentation.
Wait, how do I copy and paste from a book? Okay, I guess I'm so ancient that I'm not even on the chart.
Oh, that one takes a while because that's when you remember people talk about, oh, I saw that code in the magazine, then I typed it in.
Yeah, that was me.
That's how you do it. That's how you do it. You copy and paste with the fingers, one character at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, copy, Control-Z, Control-V, still important, but changing over time.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
It's funny.
Thanks for the episode. Thanks for being here. And thanks everyone else for listening.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye all.